All right, guys, welcome to this next episode of the Smashing Brands podcast. I'm your host, Alec, and today I am joined by my special guest, Bobby.
Hey, Alec.
So, if someone were to say, Hey, Bobby, so if somebody were to say, Bobby, how do you spend your time on planet Earth? What would you tell them?
Yeah. Basically like four things: work, jujitsu, food, and sleep.
Nice. So, it seems like during your waking hours, you're predominantly occupied by either working or doing jujitsu with some food in between.
Yeah, I mean, don't undersell food, but yeah.
I know. We'll get into food more in a little bit, but yeah, so tell us a little bit about what your agency is all about.
Yeah, of course. So MeanPug is a full service marketing and advertising agency for law firms. We are soup to nuts providers, meaning we do everything from branding to web design and development, PPC, SEO, custom Salesforce builds. We do traditional media, video production, social media. Basically, we just want to be that one-stop shop for all things growth if you're a law firm.
Nice. So my first question is, how did you get started and why did you choose that niche in particular? And maybe those kind of coincide.
Yeah, I'll give you the full genesis.
Yeah.
So I worked with my founding partner, Andrew, at a startup in New York City selling tickets. We were in a secondary ticket marketplace sales. We were
Nice.
building like a tech platform for secondary tickets, a la SeatGeek, kind of very similar to SeatGeek.
Yeah.
About 11 years ago now. So I was the first engineer there. Andrew was the first paid digital guy. Um, Company grew to about 30 employees before an exit. So exit, and then it was like, what are we going to do next? Next, we ended up joining Morgan and Morgan. Might have heard of it. Biggest personal injury law firm in the US.
Yeah.
You'll see them now on like Barstool Sports. They're on a bunch of like the Bad Friends podcast. They're all over the place.
Mhm.
Um, so we joined there. I joined as director of engineering. He was director of paid digital advertising. And we got to learn a lot about the legal industry, kind of where it sits now, and most importantly, where we think it could be, right?
Yeah.
Basically saw that it was really lagging in terms of like what folks were trying, experimenting with, and we felt like we could push that really like push that forward. So after our time at Morgan and Morgan, we were there about 3.5 years. Um, we started the agency, started MeanPug Digital, with
What
the
year?
goal of helping law firms, especially firms that don't necessarily have the budget of a Morgan and Morgan, to grow their
Yeah.
practices.
And what year was this?
This was 2020. Very well timed. I think like February 28th, 2020. And if you look back at like the COVID reports, it's probably like March 3rd or 4th that it started like blowing up.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you started this in, you said March of 2020?
About March of 2020. I mean, we started February 28th, 2020. So I think like the COVID reports were like beginning of March.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So basically right when the whole pandemic started. And since then, I mean, you guys seem to have grown faster than a lot of other agencies, right? You got this whole office, you have a decent amount of employees. And if I'm not mistaken, are you a first-time entrepreneur?
You know, first time serious entrepreneur. I've created other businesses, but they've always been
Yeah.
kind of side hustles, side project type of thing. This is the first one where I've gone all in on the business.
Yeah, so how many partners do you guys have? Or do you have?
I we have two partners. Well, three partners total, me and two others.
Nice. So how have you guys been able to make this whole thing happen? Like, okay, so you start this law firm, marketing company, and then what?
Uh, Pretty much try everything, see what sticks, right?
Yeah.
We have tried everything from cold outreach to in-person events to good old like traditional networking to gifting to inbound. We have thrown plenty of paint at the wall.
Yeah. And what do you feel like was the most effective?
Um, yeah, it's not going to be like the most satisfying answer for people who want quick fixes, but the most effective strategy is do good work. Do good
Yeah,
work and get referrals.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, there's so many different ways that you can advertise a law firm, right? I mean, so many different things. You can take more of a short form content approach. You can do Facebook lead ads. You can do Google AdWords. There's so many different things, right? What do you feel like? I know it probably depends on what firm you're working with, but what do you feel like were some of the best strategies that allowed you guys to really build your reputation and do good work?
Mm, everything needs to work in tandem. It's hard to isolate one strategy because every strategy has different horizons for ROI. You spend on PPC, the time horizon is instant. Spend today,
Yeah.
get cases tomorrow. If you spend on brand and SEO, the time horizons are, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever it is, depending on the venue and the case type. So it's really hard to isolate one strategy and say that is the strategy when the fact is you should look at your strategies almost the way you would look at your portfolio of stocks and bonds, right? You're not going to
Mhm.
just go all in on stocks, and you're not
Yeah.
going to just go all in on safe investment like bonds, CDs, whatever. You're going to have a healthy mix. So
Okay. Yeah. So when you're working with your clients, you're basically saying, hey, we're not just going to try one strategy. We're going to try a variety of different things then.
yeah, and that's why it's so important to be full service
Yeah.
is you need to be able to think about the whole picture and then strategize with those pieces in place. If you are just working with an SEO company, it's in their best interest to push all your budget into SEO because that's where they're
Yeah.
making their margin. If you work with a PPC only company, it's in their best interest to push all the budget into PPC. By working with like a full service provider, it's just aligning interests.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just there's a lot of companies out there that are just like really they try to be that really good in one particular area, but that might not be the only thing that works. And it's like somebody might hire, let's say like a Facebook ad agency, and that might not work. When in reality, if they work with maybe somebody more full service, they could be less biased around you should do this, this, and this, as opposed to just focusing on just SEO or just AdWords or something like that. So do you feel like that's a way that you've sort of been able to differentiate yourself from like the competition then?
I think that's one factor. To me, like the easiest thing to pitch when it comes to our company versus others is our experience. I think by being in house for that long at a successful law firm, it puts us in a place that literally no other agency that we're competing against has that same background. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's like one very core differentiator. And the other one is just that we're able to mold all these different pieces together. I mean, even looking at it from like the top level, having three founders, three partners, very unusual in legal marketing to have three founders. You look at any other company, they are almost to like not a fault, almost to a one led by a single owner or founder or partner, right? So what that typically means is that person comes in with a specialty, right? That person has a background in SEO, or that person has a background in content, or background in paid search, whatever it is, and that bias is going to make its way through the whole organization. So, like how, like, if you're not a developer, how are you going to know that the quality of your builds is good or bad, right? You probably won't because you don't have that background. So by us
Yeah.
having these three diverse skill sets at the highest level, it manifests through the whole company and allows us to execute at a high level across all our services.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's, as you mentioned, like for these service related businesses, like I say, marketing agencies, it seems to be more common that there's maybe one partner or two. While like if you're starting like a software company, like nobody is going to give you money unless you have like multiple founders, right?
Yep,
And there's like
exactly.
defining roles, right? It's
Right.
like, well, if you're the business guy, you need the tech guy, etc. So I'm curious, what do you, what as three founders, what is your guys' like unique skill set that each of you brings to the table for this company?
hmm I'll start with Andrew. So Andrew is all things paid digital, or sorry, paid. So he leads paid digital advertising and traditional media. So he's a really good understanding not only of the mechanics of buying on all the platforms and like how to measure success and do all the technical things that are required for successful campaign execution. He also really understands the business of law and how each of these case types manifest on the business side.
Mm,
So that's Andrew's skill set. Mike is an attorney, so he is, a barred attorney. So he obviously really understands kind of the problem set of our clientele and can
mm,
think about things and like problems that neither Andrew or I would necessarily even know to exist since we're not, on the quote unquote back end of the problems
yeah.
we're solving. Um, and then on my side, I'm pretty much all things technical. So whether it's relating to software development, web builds, kind of like the mesh, the infrastructure level of what we're doing, um, and then a lot of like the SEO type of oversight. That's all gonna roll through me.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one of your partners brings like the heavy paid advertising experience. You bring more of the technical, and then your other partner is like is an actual attorney. And I'm curious, what does he do like as an attorney throughout the day working for, a marketing agency?
What does he do? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, like how does his skill set specifically like help you guys in your day to day? Like I'm curious how is it like a lot of market research, is it a lot of sales because he's been there, done that? Like how does that play a role?
Yeah, kind of three, I would say, core pillars to what he does. The first is easiest to explain, so I'll just start there. All things contracts. So whether
Yeah.
we are like starting a new contract with a client or we're negotiating a contract or whatever,
Mhm.
that's kind of like an easy item for him to handle.
Yeah.
Uh, Second would be just general like account relationships, um, talking with our clients, making sure everybody's happy,
Okay.
doing any sort of triaging, that type of thing. And third, we actually have a service we built out internally that he leads. I don't like to go super deep into it, but suffice to say, it's a product we built out that helps attorneys build their referral networks, so their inbound referral networks. Um, we he leads that product.
Nice. Okay, so you guys are like developing like your own sort of IP and kind of
Yes, yeah, we've got a lot of software, a lot of like process driven development. We've got a lot of IP here.
interesting. So what influenced you guys' decision to also incorporate software into the company?
I
And
have always loved the hybrid model, the agency hybrid model, because it combines all the good uh, of like the agency and the product world, right? You get the equity bearing of a product, but you
Mhm.
get the cash flow of an agency, so you don't have to worry about like raising outside capital.
Yeah,
It's just like to me, best of both worlds.
yeah. And I think like a really good example of a company that's done this very well is like Moz, right?
Yeah.
Like all of their, started as an SEO company, now they do a lot more software. I actually have an agency owner friend, actually plenty, but one in particular who he's always wanted to create software on behalf of his SEO company. And it's always been a challenge for him to like figure out how exactly he would do that, the steps to launch a technical product. But that's cool that you guys are like just, whatever, 4 years in, already developing all this kind of stuff. So what do you feel like you're most excited about in 2024, just as far as like what you're working on inside of the company?
Yeah, there's some big initiatives that we've got coming in 2024. First off, we're launching our podcast.
Nice.
So, Hot Docket Podcast is coming out 2024. We've got our first episode dropping in February. So, that's been awesome getting to talk with like a lot of cool personalities in the space.
Mhm.
Um, that's number one. Number two, we've just got more events that we're sponsoring. So, we're going to be, I think we're already establishing ourselves as like a trusted brand in the space, but we're going to be more visible going into 2024. So those are both like really highlights in what we're doing.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I mean, so you live in New York City, super densely populated area. What do you feel? What is it like building an agency in an area like New York versus like a less metropolitan area?
Not sure.
Yeah,
Haven't tried building it in a less metropolitan area.
yeah.
I don't think it really matters, to be honest, today.
Uh,
Like I mean our agency is probably 50%, if not more, fully remote. And even the
yeah,
people that are in the city probably come in once, twice a day. I mean twice a week, sorry.
yeah.
So I really can't imagine that it matters too much where you're based.
So as far as like your own client acquisition, are like what percentage of your clients are in New York versus outside of New York?
Um, Not sure. Probably something like 10 to 15% in New York,
Hmm. And then the rest being out.
national, all
Yeah,
over.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But you guys were talking about how you want to sponsor more events to get some more visibility. What kind of like events are those?
Uh, we're always going to the big industry events like the MTMPs, the AAJs. Um, Sorry, not the AAJs, the like Trialer Summit, stuff like that. We go to NTL. Um, but we're also probably going to be doing a couple of the more niche conferences this year. So I don't know if I can actually say what those conferences are, to be honest. Because I know that they're launching kind of stealth. So we will be at a couple of like the smaller niche conferences this year too, though.
Nice. So yeah, you started this company about 4 years ago. What are some of like the big lessons that you've learned, you feel like?
Oh, there are the dogs. Um, Big lessons that I've learned. Let me see if I can give like a top three list.
Yeah.
First,
You like thinking in pillars and things.
yeah, first is probably however much time and effort you think it's going to take to build a business, multiply it by 10. Like you're
Uh-huh.
gonna have to deal with all the things you think of, plus how to figure out who your PEO should be, how to
Yeah.
choose health insurance for everybody. So like that's probably one.
Yeah.
Um, Two is it's it's easier to it's easier it's like hard to overstate um how much easier it is to do the thing that you are trained to do than it is to build people, culture, company. Nothing's harder than building the people processes. That is like the hardest part of this problem. Um, just because there are so many more intangibles, right? Like I'm a developer trained to work on, you know, I whatever. I know Django and WordPress and Python and Node.js, whatever. Those are the tools of my trade.
Uh,
It's very like black and white how it works and like what's good, what's bad, what if it meets spec or doesn't meet spec. How do you apply those same types of like heuristics to uh the performance of an employee, right? Like it's just not so black and white.
yeah.
So that's two. Let me see if I so the third biggest lesson, uh margin is really, really hard. Margin, even if your revenue grows, doesn't mean your margin grows. So like
Yeah.
thinking about your profit and EBITDA is like a continuous problem and it's very hard to solve.
Yeah. No, I think those are a bunch of good things. What struck me particularly was a lot of agency owners or just in general, their biggest bottleneck is either lead generation or client results or whatever it might be. But from what I'm hearing from you is that like, hey, at this stage, it's like having like continuing to build this great culture and build up the team and make sure everybody's happy is like sort of the biggest project right now, or maybe not the biggest project, but definitely something that has been more difficult than maybe you thought it might.
Yeah, well, A leads to B. If you're building product and you stack on like a bunch of shit code on top of each other, it eventually it's going to fail, right? If
Yeah.
you're selling, if you're an agency and you're selling services, your people are the code.
Yeah. And you're doing both,
Yeah,
right?
and I know. Yeah, it doesn't make it easier.
What type of culture do you try to create with your people?
I think like first and foremost for us, probably openness and transparency
Uh,
because it's the easiest thing to solve for.
yeah. You seem like a pretty open and transparent guy.
Yeah, I'd say so. I I just don't, whatever. Yes.
What were we gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, I've just never seen being not that work out well for somebody. It's always you're always like fighting an uphill battle if you're holding cards close to the chest and like not willing to talk about problems. It's like it's gonna bite you.
And I think even more than that, it's like making it clear to your employees like, hey, I want you to be open with me. I want you to give me feedback because they might look at you as their superior and be like, hey, can I tell Bobby this? Can I not tell him that? Whatever. So maybe outside of just saying, hey, like let's be open, be like, hey, like please like be honest with me, if because at least for me, I feel like the most valuable feedback has always been where I'm coming off in a certain way that I didn't intend to come off. Like I hate it when that happens, right? It's like, dang,
Yeah,
like really, I came off that way, and all these other people thought the same thing. Like, really? Okay, well,
yeah,
thanks for letting me know. Now I know, because sometimes we just have like blind spots, right?
yeah.
Things that we can work on. But yeah,
What's
man.
an example of that? Like, can you think of the last time you were misinterpreted that way?
Um, I've gotten better at it. You know what? I think some in the past it's happened a lot over email. So now I'm like very careful about how I
Yeah,
email things and like the tone and stuff like that. Um, but I think the last time that this seriously happened to me was with my own family, actually. Like I said something that came off in a way that like I didn't intend for it to. Or it shouldn't have come off that way, or but like that person didn't see it that way. So then
do you remember what you said?
I
I'm curious if it was like pass the asparagus and you were like, pass the asparagus. And they
no,
were like, oh, you came off aggressive.
no, it was something. It's not like very light like that. They're like more like family things. Like for
Yeah.
example, um, I have an older brother. He has a daughter who is my niece, and she was debating whether to go to college or not. you
Yeah.
know and for me personally, like I went to college but I graduated super young, and like I was able to graduate without any debt, and I just kind of was able to get out of the way. I did like a fast track program, was out by the time I was 19. So I'd say like, hey, like I like college, but like for the up and coming generation, like I don't really feel like a degree is 100% necessary,
Yeah.
right? And my brother thought that I was telling my niece that like don't go to college, it's not good, blah blah blah. And that's how he thought that I was saying it to her, which isn't how I intended to come off. I meant to say that, like, hey, you got to think about all these things. Like, if I were to, do it again, would I? Maybe, maybe not. It really depends on the situation. But I'm not like 100% for it. I think it's something that's for the right kinds of people that want to get into something where you really need that education. So, for example, lawyer, doctor, all of those sort of things. But like, sorry, an advertising agency, for example. I mean, I got a marketing degree and like my marketing professor, like, nothing, like there wasn't anything
Yeah.
very valuable whatsoever. But anyway, I had to, tell my brother like, hey, I didn't mean to tell your daughter it like that. I meant to come off in this particular way and whatever it might be. But I don't know, but this is an interesting segue. What are your thoughts on college?
I agree with you. Totally depends on what you're trying to do. Like, and then there's, I think, some gray areas that, well, I'll walk through those second. Like 100% doctor, lawyer, anything like that. It's just a requirement. You have to go to college. But yeah, I think there's like a bad kind of stigma around not going to college, first of all. And I think there's plenty of jobs where you don't need it. The tangent I was going to go down a little bit, and that gray area is computer science. Like
Right.
you see a ton of these boot camps popping up and folks graduating, and that's fine. I know there's plenty of good boot camps and plenty of good graduates, but here's the reason why I think it is still important to go to computer science, to college for computer science. It's
Mhm.
twofold. First, if you're an employer, you're getting bombarded by folks who went through a 6 week, 8 week boot camp
Yeah.
for every position. So you just stand out by having like the computer science degree.
Mhm.
That's one. And two is same reason or like same kind of backing that a lawyer will tell you why law school is important. It's not about what you learn, it's about what it teaches you around how to think.
Yeah.
Computer science, going to school for computer science really teaches you how to think about algorithms, think about problems, and break them apart. Um, and I think it also teaches you to work to work really hard and sacrifice for 4 years. It's just an incredibly difficult degree program.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Especially for computer science. Because a lot of what you learn, okay, I took one coding class. I saw the movie The Internship. You remember The Internship where Owen Wilson and I think it's Vince Vaughn like
Oh
get
yeah, yeah, yeah. Google.
so yeah, I watched that movie when I was 15 years old and I was like, I want to be a software developer at Google. Like I
No,
just wanted to. Such a great marketing movie in my opinion. Like, wow,
it's
that's
amazing.
what Google is like. Really, it got
Mm.
and when I was 15, just about to turn 16, I took my first college level coaching college level coding course, CS something something something, and I like passed with a D. And I was like, nah, like this is for me. And then I went
Yeah,
and that made a lot more sense. But what I was trying to get at was yeah, you're working through a lot of problems that are, directly related to computer science. While like in business, like I spent hours and hours studying like macroeconomics and like what else? Managerial econ. That was the class that was just like total hell.
no,
Like all these weird advanced formulas, like for what?
yeah, right. You're not applying that today?
Yeah, exactly. And but if everything like, for example, that I learned in marketing was built on like, all of the, Facebook ads, even SEO, copywriting, all of that, like that would have made a lot more sense. But instead it was all very theoretical.
Yeah,
It was like this is what, Coca-Cola did back in, in this third world country on this day, and like a lot of just like remembering things. There was also a lot of like surveying and data, but it just wasn't as applicable. Well, I don't know this for sure because I didn't get a computer science degree, but it seems like when you study computer science, the problems that you're made to think through throughout a lot of your classes are actually more applicable to the real world and solving that, even if it's like maybe
Mm,
in a different language. I don't know.
yes and no. Like ask a programmer how many times they've needed to use a linked list in their implementation, or
Yeah.
even something more primary like a tree structure. Very rare. 99% of problems you're going to solve with like arrays and maps or hashes or dicts, whatever you want to call them. Dict, DICT, by the way. So, you know, it it's probably similar, like in terms of there's plenty of abstract stuff that you're not going to use, esoteric stuff, but um, no, for sure, there's a lot of concrete work that you do.
Yeah. So segueing back, you as a business owner, like let's say it's March of 2020 again. What advice would you like have given yourself? Actually, I'm gonna go a step further here. What advice would you have given yourself, knowing what you know now as an entrepreneur, having this successful company? What advice would you give? What advice would you have given yourself, let's say 10 years ago?
Mm,
Or what
10
were you
years
doing
ago,
then?
my advice probably would have been don't move to Vegas.
Don't move
I
to Vegas.
um I moved to Vegas for my first job out of college.
Yeah.
I actually worked with like an amazing company. I love the company. I'm still in touch with the founders and I consider them friends. They're killing it now. So I am very happy that I worked there.
Yeah.
But Vegas, I would not recommend anybody live in. It's just not a livable place.
What doesn't make it livable?
Depressing. It's a very depressing place.
Interesting, because I grew up in Seattle, and that's also a depressing place. But for
Different
different
though. Seattle,
reasons.
I feel like is like inspiring depressing. Vegas is
Yeah.
just like kill yourself depressing. A
Why
little
is
bit
that?
different.
'Cause I haven't heard that before.
You haven't heard that before? Really?
Uh-uh.
Go into like any casino anywhere and there's like heavy smell of cigarette smoke,
Yeah.
people wasting their pension on penny slots. Like it's so depressing.
Well, yeah, I understand that element, but just coming from like a local living there, like what if you avoid the casinos and stuff like that? Or are you
Kind of
saying,
hard. I mean, you
okay,
can go up to like downtown, you can go to downtown, you can go to Summerlin, you can go to Henderson, but like the strip is where most of the restaurants are, most of the entertainment. So, yeah, you can kind of avoid it, but at the same time, you're going to see it.
yeah, that makes sense. So it's just like it's hard to get around that like negative vibe of people that are just like gambling their money away, getting super drunk, escaping life, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's always there.
Okay, well, good to know. I was actually just in Vegas for affiliate summit last week, and that was interesting. But yeah, man, I haven't ever spent like more than like a few days out there.
No,
I do like 3 days, and then like, all right, we're good. Like,
yeah, that's exactly how much time you should spend there.
yeah. Now, what advice would you have given yourself 4 years ago when you were starting your company?
Um, I probably would have done things a little bit different in terms of the order that we tried to. I mean, there's for sure I probably would have tried different sales strategies because you only learn what's going to work once you've tried it, and like we wasted a ton of money on things that we didn't have to. So
Yeah,
that's easy. Probably like I would have taken what's that? There's like a famous Harvard study that it costs like 10 times more to acquire a new client than to retain an existing client. There's something like that. I would
yeah,
have taken that way more to heart and spent a lot more time retaining as opposed to trying to acquire.
yeah.
Yeah, those are probably two of the big ones.
And it's a lot easier to sell your existing clients on something than it is to sell new clients on something too. So yeah,
Yeah.
I like that advice. Um, so I have one final question for you, Bobby. So let's say, it's going a little deep, all right? It's the end of your life, it's I don't know, I don't want to say, but you're old, you're
Yeah.
wise, you did everything that you wanted to do, you're on your deathbed, and you get to leave the world with three truths, three things that you know to be true about the world around you. What are they?
Good question. Hmm. That's pretty deep. I feel like I have to really think about that.
That's okay. Take your time.
All right,
You have your answer?
you're ready? Now that you get the water, you ready to hear the three truths?
Yes.
Okay, first, people are fundamentally good. Most people are fundamentally good.
Hmm.
Second, we don't deserve dogs.
We don't deserve what?
Dogs.
Because they're so sweet.
Yeah. And third, the best food is pizza.
The best food is pizza. I love it, man. What's your favorite pizza spot in New York?
I mean, we got a good place right here. Table 87 is good. I really like I really like Brooklyn Pizza Masters. I think there's one in Williamsburg, but I usually go to the one Midtown East.
Mhm.
That's very good. Prince Street Pizza is excellent. Um,
What about Di Fara? Have you heard of Di Fara?
Tafara, yeah, I don't love Tafara. I think it's overrated.
Uh-huh.
Same as Lucali. They're both overrated.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious about most people are fundamentally good. Expand on that a little bit.
Uh, I just think that everyone has their own intentions
Hmm.
and like they're own hero in their story. You look at most actions that look nefarious, they are probably they might not be driven by motives that you would think are pure, but there's a rationale behind it, right? It's not just like strictly evil.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think most people are fundamentally good and trying to be moral individuals.
Yeah, it kind of goes with like don't take anything personally, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's doing their own thing, doing the best that they can, blah, blah, blah. But anyway,
Mhm.
Bobby, great having you on the podcast. What's the best way for people to follow and connect with you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bark at meanpug.com, like woof woof bark. That's probably the easiest way to email us, follow us on social. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, you name it, we're there. And connect with us. We do a bunch of cool stuff. Lots of like talks, conversations, workshops, seminars, all that is we put out on social.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, everybody, Bobby, thanks again for being on the podcast, and thanks everyone for watching.